It is your classic metal show right here on the classicmetalshow.com. That, of course, is Megadeth from their Peace Sells, But Who's Buying release with Good Morning Black Friday. And I want to say good evening, gentlemen. Glad to have you here on the Classic Metal Show again.
I'm glad to be here.
Hi,
good
Dave.
evening, Saturday evening.
It's been a while.
Yeah, I'm actually got my bass in my hand. It was kind of fun to play along to that for a minute. I haven't heard that song in a while. We're funny enough, we were actually working on that last summer, 2018, when we were in Europe. I remember we were actually on stage. We did some dates with Judas Priest, and I remember there was one show in particular. It was hot as hell. It was inside of like a big tent, probably somewhere in Germany. And I remember working on getting that ready to go. It was ready to go, and then we never did play it. So at least we learned it again, you know.
Very disappointing.
Yeah, well, you know, there's always next time, right?
Perfect. Well, Dave and Drew, we wanted to bring you on the show here because obviously you guys are promoting a new collaboration and a book here. And Dave, you've been kind of branching out into the whole writing thing here. This is what, your third book now?
Actually, it's my fourth or fifth. I mean, my first book I wrote was a book called Making Music Your Business, a guide for young musicians. And that published in 1997. I started writing it when we were on the Euthanasia tour back in 94, 95. I started to think about, you know, like just kind of giving experience and wisdom to young musicians. You know, a lot of the metal fans, Megadeth fans for sure, are also musicians. Some aspire to rock stardom. You know, most just kind of want to maybe give it a try, you know, play a little bit. So I wrote a book that had I think I had 26 chapters in it, and they're very short little, you know, chapters. And the idea was to throw it into your guitar case, so you can sort of pull it out as a reference guide. You know, oh, this guy says he wants to be our manager. What do we do? Let me open Ellefson's book and read, you know. And so that was the first one. And then I did a book called Unsung Words and Images, which was through Blurb. Drew, I don't know if you knew that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So we and I collaborated that on a friend of mine. He had a great poetry book, and he put photograph images against his poetry. I thought that's a cool idea. Rather than putting lyrics to music, let's put lyrics to photographs, you know. And there's this wonderful woman, I think Raphael is how you say her name, but she's from Italy, and so we utilized her images and did that. And then I've got two memoirs, My Life with Death, that came out in 2020. What the hell was it? 2013, I think, 2014. And then More Life with Death that Tom Hazert and I wrote together that came out last year. And then now this little crazy concoction here, Rock Star Hitman, that I had to tap my friend Drew because he looks innocent and all cute and everything, but inside of his skull is a very demented, sick mind. I needed to engage him in the story.
Well, he's a fan of this show, Dave, so you know he is a sick mind.
Yeah, case in point.
Yeah, I love it.
Nice. But it's funny with this book. I'd always wanted to write fiction, and as far back as the 90s when I started writing that first book, I always wanted to write fiction. It's funny, I think I was reading Norman Vincent Peale. I was kind of new in my sobriety. I was probably, you know, I don't know, 4 or 5 years sober at the time, and so, you know, a lot of kind of inspirational books. So I guess, you know, Making Music Your Business was probably a pretty good reflection of where my mind and my heart center was at that time, you know, kind of wanting to pass on goodness and, you know, helpfulness to other people. But I always had this thought of doing fiction, and I never had a story. And, you know, it's funny, back in December, I was on a solo bass story tour. I was down in Sao Paulo, Brazil, and a good friend of mine back here in Scottsdale, he called me up, and his name is Robert Spector. We gave him a nice thank you in the book. And, he called me up. He goes, "Where are you at?" And I said, "I'm down in Brazil." And he said to me, he goes, "You know, we all think you're this rock star musician traveling around the world. I often think sometimes you might work for the FBI or the CIA and you're just on some covert mission traveling around the world." I thought, dude, that is a great idea for a book. And literally I started writing I mean, I think I hit Drew. I think I hit you like that night or the next day, because we were working on you're working on the Dwellers film that we're putting out through Ellefson Films, and I hit Tom Hazart, and so we created the Ellefson Books imprint, Ellefson Book Company, and it just kind of all came together, you know. And I swear to God, that, you know, when inspiration hits, it's kind of like writing a song, you know, or writing an album. You know, when you start, you can't put you know, when the genie's out of the bottle, you can't get it back in, you know, and so the inspiration was going. I mean, Drew wrote an epilogue like in like an hour. He had this epilogue back to me. I was jumping on airplanes, trying to get my last little bit of Wi-Fi and checking email. Drew sending things over to me. I'm going, oh my gosh, what a great collaboration this is, you know. So of course, I travel the world, so I kind of get the rock star part of it down pretty good, and I started kind of think of like everything from probably Mission Impossible to Jason Bourne, you know. So I think we got something here. You know, the idea is that our character's name is Sledge, so we call it the Sledge Chronicles. Okay. And Rock Star Hitman is sort of the subcontext title of it. And I'm literally a little earlier tonight, I was actually already working on book 2. Drew and I have been sending things back and forth. So the idea being that as Sledge travels around the world with his band, more crazy international espionage and drug lords and crazy stuff will happen. So many of whom are in your line of fire while you're traveling around the world as a rock star. Nice. So many of whom we probably dealt with as promoters and other people of ill repute, and who knows, fans and stuff that may come to the shows. Who knows? You know, sometimes it's better not to ask too many questions. You know, just get into the country, do your business, and get on your way. You know.
Sure. Now, you know, I told you guys before we started, I've written a few books myself, and I understand the writing process solo. I certainly understand you got to make time and you got to commit to it and you got to have your ideas together, or it's just not going to work. How do you write fiction at all? Because I've tried and I stink at it. I cannot develop the characters real well.
Yeah.
But how do you write not only fiction, but also collaboratively? Is one of you the dominant writer, or do you trade chapters? Because I guess I don't understand how you can keep the theme that you're inventing on the go working together.
Good question. So I think with this one, because I had this initial idea, I sort of had the big picture of it, right? And I read a lot of Jack Reacher books, so obviously he's a narrative character that carries through to many different books. His author Lee Childs is great at creating Jack Reacher stories in many different settings. So I love that. I also like John Grisham books, and he being a lawyer. He started, you know, kind of blew Where Your Planet. So start close to home. What did he know? He knows law. So most of his fictional stories are based in some sort of law, legal, society, if you will. So I thought the same thing. Well, look, let me bloom where I'm planted, which is in rock stardom. Same with Drew. You know, he's a musician and a recording artist himself. So that was kind of an easy read. So I think how this one started is it's amazing when the idea hits. You just go with it. And I just started developing characters. And I think that was kind of my initial thing, is get the overarching idea of our character and even the sort of continuation novel series. And then I started to develop the characters. And then I turned it over to Drew to say, okay, now shit needs to get bloody. And that's where Drew comes in. And so he took it to a whole different place that I'll be honest with you, I would have never taken it to. And also Drew brought in a sense of humor to our character, Sledge, which I thought was very cool, because I tend to be kind of the straight man. And, you know, even in my bands that I'm in, I'm always kind of the funny man. And I'm the straight man, and there's a funny man next to me, you know, there's kind of the old Abbott and Costello. Laurel and Hardy, you know, so I just tend to be that way. I'm a little more linear. I'm a little more analytical. So I tend to be a little more serious about things, but I'm also really good at the details, filling in street names and developing characters, and that kind of, you know, so character development and sort of story development is my, probably my talent on this one. But yeah, Drew is able to take it into some freaking dark places, man. I'm like, whoa, I would have never gone there. So I don't know, Drew, you can pick it up from there. You can maybe talk about your contribution from there.
Oh yeah, sure. Yeah, just made as many screwed up situations as humanly possible, and made you feel terrible at certain points. It's like one of those kind of books you start reading it, and it's like, oh God, I can't believe I just read that. But it's like a train wreck, and you want to keep on reading and see what happens next, And I just try and paint a very, very vivid picture inside your head when you read certain parts, and it makes you feel something, whether it be,
and a very good self-deprecating humor,
Yeah.
something that like is in a way kind of makes you almost champion the character, even when the character does some kind of dumb stuff. You kind of go, oh man, that poor kid.
Oh yeah, he's kind of like Ash from Evil Dead, like a Bruce Campbell kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the anti-hero kind of thing, but like, it's a lot of good comedy in there. Like Chris, I know you get a kick out of the comedy for sure. It's
Dark?
Very, very dark, very dark.
Yeah.
But actually, that's my. I actually did a memoir too. I called it "Dark, Depressing, and Hilarious" because that's what it's like being a bang tango. But
but I will say to Drew's credit, he was just like, oh, I got my gun and I shot the guy. He's got some very creative killing. I mean, I have an agent and I appear at a lot of these horror cons. I find the horror cons to be probably a better mix with the heavy metal fan base than straight Comic-Con. I do both, but the horror con, of course, are great. And one thing I really like about this is to be able to bring the book. I was at the Days of the Dead horror show back in Chicago, I guess 2 years ago. And it was Charlie Benante, who was new. I think probably his first show he'd appeared at. Next to him was me, and I've been to a bunch of shows. So I had a pretty good merchandising table of stuff. And then next to me was Brian Welsh, Head from Korn. And he's got a compelling story because of his faith story, his
Right.
leaving Korn, his born again story, very dramatic, very compelling. And he had 3 books. I'm like, whoa, I got to get going here. So I got to say Head inspired me to get writing. That's why we pushed out that second memoir last year. And now this year to have this book. I mean, I think now also with the Ellefson Book Company, we have different distributors we can use. We've got different avenues to go with the printing. And so it's funny, as sick and twisted as Drew is over there, as an author, he's got incredible. It's funny at the sort of the end of the pipeline, which is sort of, okay, now we got to put this together, print it, format it, proof it, and find the right pressing and printing and the logistics on that side. Drew's incredibly talented and patient with that. In fact, we helped a friend of mine, Danny Zalesko, who's a concert promoter here in Phoenix. He called me one day and he just said, man, he goes, I've got this book. I've been working on it for years. It's almost done. I can't get it done. And he just said, look, I'm so impressed with everything that you've got going on. And I said, thank you. I said, first of all, I don't do it by myself. So let me tap a couple of the people in my team to do it. And Drew being that guy. And so we got on the phone and Drew worked very diligently for free, just kind of as a buddy. I'd asked him, I said, hey, just do this one as an act of goodwill. And I said, look, also it's going to kind of help us set up how to do this book, to kind of find the different printing, where to do this, outsourcing for the printing and the different distribution network and stuff. You've got one too. Nice. And so it's great because obviously there's this soft cover.
I'll hold them up.
Yeah, exactly. Hey, but what's funny? What's funny about this is we've got the soft cover, which has the same matte material as More Life with Death had, which people really liked. They really liked that. And then Drew also chased down the hardcover option.
Okay.
And these aren't really thick. So these are going to be a pretty quick read, which is good. What do we have here, Drew? A couple hundred pages, 250 or something?
I think it's like 212.
212, yeah. It's not super, super big, which is good. I look, traveling around, I like books that, in fact, I just read a couple of thriller novels recently, and they were too thick and too long. And to me,
that's what she said.
I use the music thing. Don't bore us, get to the chorus. You know what I mean? And sometimes you can overdevelop a situation that could have been said in half the amount of time, And I like where Drew and I got right to the heart of the matter on this stuff.
It's not too much fluff. There's not fluff. It's just kind of direct to the
Yeah.
point, and just really hits you like a bullet. You know, it's because a lot of books, you read a lot of Stephen King and all that. You could spend 14 pages describing how a door creaked. You know, and we don't really do that. We just kind of condense as much as humanly possible, and just kind of hit you with as a vivid picture as I could paint as efficiently as humanly possible, and it came together great. They're really happy with it.
Yeah. And short chapters too. You know, it's funny, when I was putting together my first memoir, I just come back to Megadeth. Dave Mustaine had just put out his first memoir. And one of the things that he said to me, because I let him read my manuscript, and one of the things he said to me is, he goes, remember to keep your chapters short, because it allows the reader to be able to set the book down and pick it up quickly again. And it's interesting he said that, and I followed that direction when I was putting together my memoirs. And I think we did the same thing here. What was interesting is right around that same time, the Keith Richards book came out, which is like a Bible, super, super thick. You know,
Sure.
He goes into incredible detail of his childhood, walking the streets of London with his mother, and the mortars and the bombs that were falling out of the planes and being bombed by the Germans. And, you know, he goes, I mean, it's amazing, his detail. But at the same time, it was not a book you could just put down. And as a result, I didn't end up finishing the book. At the same time, I think probably one of the first rock stars who wrote a memoir was David Lee Roth.
Right.
And I remember his book, and I'm a huge Van Halen fan. So, you know, his book was so outrageous and just insane, but compelling, funny, that, you know, it was literally out on my coffee table out here in my front room of my house, and I would leave it there, and I would just sit down randomly on and off throughout a year or two and just pick it up and just start reading a few pages. And so it really is true that I think, and especially with this kind of a book, you know, especially as we're, you know, introducing this character, we're introducing the story, that it's important that these chapters aren't too long. That we every chapter is there for a purpose. It tells, there's a purpose to the storyline. But you can put it down. I read before I go to bed. I read every night, and sometimes, you know, reading makes me sleepy, which is nice. And when I read, I don't want to sit there and go, oh my gosh, I wish this chapter would end so I can just put the book down. You know, you know, I want it to be something that's exciting, compelling, and when it ends, I go, oh my God, I can't wait to pick this up tomorrow. Okay, good night. You know, so I think we kind of hit all the criteria points on this one.
Well, Drew, what is your background? I mean, what is your story? I mean, you know, you seem like a fairly young guy, and you obviously have grabbed the attention of, you know, people in the rock community, and you know, Dave obviously speaks highly of your skills and your input. So what's your background? Where do you come from? What do you do?
Oh man, well, it all started when I met Bang Tango at a bar, and
This almost sounds like a joke.
Yeah. And I was working at this bar on the south side of Chicago, and my boss was like, "Hey, Bang Tango's coming to play," and I was like, "What'd you call me?" And so my older brother was a big fan of theirs, and so he filled me in, and I was like, "All right, cool." So it was like on an off day, I went to check him out, and the singer, you know, as I met Joe Lestay, I remembered him from Beautiful Creatures, and he walks up to me, and I had a camera in my hand, and he's like, "Hey man, I got 2 questions for you." Okay. One, do you know where I can find some weed? And I was like, no, I'm sorry, buddy. And 2, what's that in your hand? I was like, oh, it's a camera. And he was like, we're going to be recording an album in Chicago in 2 weeks. Want to do like a studio documentary? And that's how it all started. And then I just followed him around with the camera for a couple of years, and that turned into a full-length like documentary. And I ended up getting Dee Snider to do the opening narration. Ricky Rackman's in it, and that turned into Attack Like the Bang Tango movie. And it's very brutally honest. Like, it's not a fluff piece whatsoever. Like, you know, Joe, you know, it depends on the viewer how you feel about the band after you watch it. But I remember I screened it once in Chicago, and Joe Lestay, I had the band there at the time, which is Joe's the only original member at that point. And as the movie's playing and Joe's speaking on the screen, my favorite moment of the whole evening was Joe standing up, pointing at the screen as he's saying something, going, "Hey, I didn't say that." And it was incredible. And he was kind of upset afterwards, but he looked at me. He's like, "Hey, man, you know the truth hurts, and I really appreciate you doing this." And then, like 2 days later, I joined the band, and it was like that scene in that movie Ted, where he's like going for the job interview. He doesn't want the job, and he's saying all these terrible things about the guy's wife and all that, and then he gets the job anyway.
Right.
That's pretty much the same situation. And a lot of that was due to Rowan Robinson as well, who was playing guitar for them, and he became a good friend, and we hit it off, and we're just, he really was like, it's a 2 guitar player band. They were down to 1 guitar at that point, so he was like, "Joe, we should just get Drew. He's easy," and it was. And so yeah, we played with them for a couple years, and about a year in, we played Rocklahoma, and somehow, some way, we opened up the main stage. And it was us, 6 a.m., Megadeth, Rob Zombie, and Disturbed. And that's when I met Dave for the first time.
Okay.
And I've always been a huge Megadeth fan. I never bring it up to Dave, really, but dude, I'm a huge Megadeth geek, just so you know. But
I'll keep that in mind.
Yeah, exactly. But
Are you buying for Kiko's job there, Drew? Is that what?
Oh man. I don't know. But and I also knew Tom Hazard, so he was a part of the bringing me and Dave together as well, and all that, and then from there I ended up leaving Bang Tango and started playing guitar for Chuck Mosley from Faith No More, and Tom actually helped put that together as well, and loved Chuck. He was incredible. He only knew him for about 6 months, but he became a close friend. Like I really miss him very much, and so I played with him up until he passed, and then what else did I do? I was working with EMP for a little while. That's kind of going on, hitting the road with Tom, and hitting up all the festivals and promoting the label and everything. And I put together this like science project of a band called Zen from Mars. It was me, Mike Keller from Fear Factory, who also plays for Raven, Bryn Arns from the band Flip, Chips Enough from Enough's Enough, and Stephen Shiro from Kick Tracy singing.
Okay.
And Kate Kennelina, Chip's wife, on keyboards. And that album's been in the mixing stage for the past 5 years.
Sounds like Chip.
Yeah. There's a lot of, oh man, that was, it seemed like a great idea at the time, shot myself in the foot. But
one of the hardest things for musicians is to get out of their own way,
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
And artist work is never done, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so that'll be out eventually. I'm sure we got 2 different versions of the album now, actually. And I learned through that process that the excuse of creative differences does actually exist, and I will attest to that. And what else I do?
Well, what I wanted to get to is, obviously you're into the writing realm, and collaborating obviously with Dave here, and how did you come up with your writing chops, as far as your input or your thoughts or your what do you want to call it, your skill set in doing writing fiction or writing books?
Oh, to be honest with you, I never did it before. And
well, it's funny, if I can just kind of jump in on that, I guess it was a little over a year ago, Drew, Tom hit me and he said, "Hey, Drew's got this movie he's working on called Dwellers." And I think that was that's what piqued my interest about the collaboration on this book series is, this to come up with a film idea, because that's like a whole other thing. I know nothing about filmmaking. I mean, I've shot a bunch of videos. Yeah, I've shot a bunch of videos. I admire when I work on videos and television shows on things as a performer. You see people there that have really studied the craft. They really know how to develop a story. They've gone to school, and there's a real art to it. And some people just land in it because they've got a knack for it. Other people are very they're educated with it. So I thought just the fact that Drew is one of these guys that lands at Bang Tango, shoots a movie for them, and then takes that expertise, kind of this homegrown expertise, and creates this fictional movie, kind of in like a Blair Witch genre, you know, kind of the home video camera genre, which I didn't even know. That I thought there was just like a movie, and it turns out it's like a full genre of that kind of stuff. It's like the Nirvana of filmmaking, you know.
Just grab a camera and just find a sewer, then you know we got a movie.
Yeah.
And I guess the writing thing for me started. I actually ended up doing an autobiography a couple of years ago because all the random stuff I ended up doing, and I got into acting also too. I was in this movie called Her Name Was Krista, and it's the most romantic necrophilia story you'll ever see. And it's definitely check it out. It's one of those culty kind of movies that you'll, and I know you'd like it a lot, Chris. It's really good.
What, am I the purveyor of everything that's filth? I mean,
you're the pervert. Oh, Chris.
I listen to the show a lot, so I know what's up here.
Fair enough.
Well, I'm the clean, born-again Christian guy. I know Dave and I can relate. You know, we accepted the Lord and Savior as our, you know, as our self.
That's why we're on the top looking down.
That's
on you.
right.
Exactly. The
purveyors of filth.
That's right.
That's great.
Hey.
And,
I didn't get here by being a choir boy. Trust me.
And let's see, and then so I was like, I saw everybody writing books, and I was like, let's see if I can do it. So I ended up writing it in like 3 days, and I was like, oh shit, and then I expanded on it a little bit more. Then Melody Myers, who did the artwork for our new book, did the artwork for my autobiography. It's called Dark, Depressing, Hilarious, and it's just all the random stuff I did and all that, and people seem to get a kick out of it because, you know, I'm kind of like a goofy, self-deprecating purveyor of filth, if you will, and and then so then after that I was like, oh, I guess I can write books now too. And then after, I never, you know, I always like to do random stuff, like, you know, I mean, so after that I was like, oh, let's do another movie. And so I was like, what's the cheapest way we could go about doing this? And I was like, oh, found footage, of course. I got a camera. And then I wrote the script of Dwellers, which is completely like 99.9% different to where it ended up, because I just kind of let the movie dictate where the story was going to go, what was going to work and what wasn't going to work. Because, you know, when you write something down and go to shoot it, it could just take a whole different context you didn't expect, and it could either work better or worse. And so it was kind of fascinating to go through that with making Dwellers, and it came out. I'm really proud of that one. It came out great. Like I can't wait for everybody to see it. It's really cool, and Dave's in it, and a lot of cool little cameos too. Like Jeff Hatrix from Mushroomhead's in it, and Tommy Church from Mushroomhead. Chips and Nuffs got a little cameo, and
our friends at Mad Monster here are going to actually premiere it for us in Charlotte, North Carolina, February 19th through 21st. They've offered us the premiere spot for the film, which is great, because unlike that record you're working on, Drew, the film has to come out one day. It needs a new day.
Exactly.
And so, you know, it's funny. So artists. I remember when we were making the Euthanasia record, and Max Norman, our producer, he goes, "Man, we've got to get in and start recording this record next week. We're out of money, we're out of time, you know." And I said, "Well, what's the budget?" He goes, "Man, the budget is it'll expand until you're just out of money, and the calendar will just keep expanding until you're out of time. So now's the time we got to get going, you know." In his British accent, and I love that. You know, the time and budget will expand to whatever the budget and the time is, you know. Right. So I find sometimes with creative things, if there isn't a deadline, it can go. And what happens is then you sort of lose your way. It's easy to lose the plot. It fizzles, it sits there, and then it's like hard to pick it back up and get going again. And I find it's one of the things with this second Sledge book. It's why I've stayed engaged in it, because the story itself keeps me excited. Kind of like when you're writing a song, you know, the song itself and that process, you don't want to lose that. It's like, you know, usually when I write, I'm like, I want to get in the studio right now and record this. I want to get this tracked and done. And sometimes I make records and I never listen to them again, to be honest with you. But because it for me, it's about getting the creation done, recorded, archived, and that kind of is a sort of validation that it gives. And so even like with Dwellers, it was great that our, you know, Evan and our friends at Mad Monster were were cool enough about offering it to us, because I called Drew right away. I said, dude, we got a deadline now. Let's get that thing wrapped up.
Yeah, otherwise it would have ended up like Zen from Mars. Like,
Yeah,
you know,
yeah,
but,
exactly.
And it's ironically, the character Dave plays in the movie, it pretty much has that same conversation with me, like in the movie, because we play ourselves, you know.
Like, dude, what the hell? Come on, like, really?
Like,
how, you know,
And I was like, let's see if we could get this to actually happen in real life, and sure enough, it pretty much did.
So in a weird way, you know, if art imitates life, you know, that probably is my role in this too. It's like, hey, let's get this shit going. Go on. You know, let's get this stuff done now. You know, so.
Yeah, exactly. When you find that mojo, though, when you find that mojo, you just got to latch onto it and keep it going. Yeah. You know, like right now I'm in the mode to finish up Dwellers, and after that I'll probably get in the mode to help finish out this next Sledge book and all that. And that's kind of, you got to latch onto that you know, this creative, like, you know.
Dave, you know, I'm following along. I'm hearing what you're saying, but the reality that goes through my mind is that you have 936 projects going on at any given moment.
937.
I mean, you're talking about, you've got a book, you're obviously working the new Megadeth record. You're, you know, you said there's a movie thing, there's the coffee, there's all these different things. How do you find focus on any one thing when you have such a plethora of, you know, legitimate business things going on at once?
Yeah. Well, you know what? I wake up every day and I basically go to work for my company, you know, my company meaning Ellefson, right?
Right.
And I kind of separate myself from that. You know, I might be the CEO, but I got to go to work and steer the ship. You know, when I worked, I did artist relations for Peavey, and Hartley Peavey single-handedly was the sole owner of Peavey, and a very vast, huge empire at one time, that company. And I saw that with him. You know, he still showed up. You know, he flew home to to West Palm every weekend because he could afford to live there. But he flew back, you know, every Monday he was in the office in Meridian, Mississippi, running his company because his name was on the door. And one of the things that Tom Hazard has been really brilliant with was marketing our brand. And he's very good at that. And he's very, I mean, funny, I'm looking here on my desk. I've got the Ellefson coffee, the Ellefson this, I've got an Ellefson mask. You know, there's a consistency to the brand that runs across it. And Tom is an incredible marketing guy. And that really helps. And even like with the book and the Ellefson Book Company, you know, that there's a consistency to the brand that runs across it. And, you know, so, you know, I guess, you know, similar to, you know, my mentor, Hartley Peavey, he had guitars, he had amps, he had PA, he had this, he had that. You know, every day they're just part of the same company. So to me, you know, part of it is the book company. And then this last week, just a couple of days ago, yesterday, actually, I was busy, you know, getting a coffee order out the door because I'm personally autographing bags right now during the COVID. So, and then we just got Ellefson Coffee and Amazon, you know, so some days I'm working, man, I'm really into Ellefson Coffee mode. That's the deal. And then, you know, we're doing a lot of press and promotion around, you know, this new album here, this no cover record. And in fact, just last night, we did a live stream, me and Tom, and I actually picked my bass up, which I've got a few of them sitting here. And I finally picked a bass up. We were on tour last week, but I've been home now a week and I haven't touched an instrument the whole week. And I thought, okay, now I got to like kind of shut the media machine down for a minute. And I got to just pick a bass up and just play for the fun of it. And it's fun because we're going to add some new songs into the set for a little tour we have coming up next week. And so it got me excited again. I was like, yeah, I get to like learn new songs, you know. And I remember it's like, you know, hey, I got a new album out. I got like 18 songs I can choose from, you know, great. So I don't even have to go that far to find them. They're right here.
Right.
So, you know, today was kind of a musical day, you know, listening to music again, falling back in love with like, God, yeah, we did a good job on that record. And then getting excited about learning them. And then knowing tonight, we had this call, which is now we switch gears. Obviously, when we called, I had my bass in my hand.
Right.
Now we're in book mode. You know what I mean? So I think a lot of it is just kind of, you know, sort of organizing the day, you know, and, you know, this is my office. This is where I do all of it. I record here, I write books here, we do media here, we work on coffee fulfillment. So that's what I do. You know, every day I wake up and I decided a few years ago, I was like, you know what, I'm going to go to work for me because I can trust me. I pay my bills. I'm reliable. I'm where I say I'll be. If I tell you I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it. And so in my company, I you know, as a lead, as the leader of the company, the buck stops with me, you know, and so I just figured I'm probably my favorite boss. And when it doesn't go well, I have to take responsibility for it, you know, and I have to look at things. And I told everybody, so listen, I'm not taking my rock star money I've made and funding a bunch of companies so that people can just go wine and dine and spend all of our money and make mistakes and botch things up. And so I was very clear. So that these companies have to live and die on their own merit, you know,
right.
I'm putting my name on it. And that's 55 years on this planet and, you know, 37 years in Megadeth and all this stuff. So I'm lending a pretty big gift to all these things, because a gift that was given to me, I'm giving back to the brand. But I also expect everybody that I work with, and Drew knows this, you know, I'm pretty demanding. I want stuff done right, and I want it to be done a certain way. And you know, and the truth of it is I don't do it all. Drew helps me, Tom Hazard helps me, Melanie Myers. We've got a whole team of people, and we all march in the same direction. So it's not for me to certainly sit here and take all the credit for it by any means.
Right.
You know? Yeah.
Well, two quick things. One, if you're on Amazon now, you're going to take like thousands of my dollars, because I'm always on Amazon and I love the Roast in Peace. It's the best coffee that's out there. So
I know a guy.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh, guy.
But I do want to ask you, man, since you have all of these businesses now, is the fact that you've rebuilt David Ellefson into a multi-business brand, is that a reaction to the fallout that you and Mustaine had years ago when you left the band? You know, more or less to kind of leave you to where you won't get caught, even if something bad were, God forbid, were to happen again, to where you won't be, all your eggs will fall out of the basket and then you got to pick them up again?
100%. And to go out and honestly, you know, as the saying goes, you know, fool me once, shame on you, fool me twice, shame on me. So if I got caught with my pants down a second time, I got no one to blame but me, you know. And not that I was ever in the blame game, because the truth of it is I knew that back in 2000. I saw problems coming in 2001. And by 2002, you know, Megadeth had disbanded. David walked away from it for reasons that he needed to, and I understood. And so for me to sit there and go, oh my God, how am I going to pay my mortgage? How am I going to do this? I've got a young family. How am I going to do all this? Yeah, I got no one to blame but myself, you know, for being in that position. And the good news is, you know, the good Lord provides. You talked about being a man of faith, you know, and I just stood there and part of me, I went, oh, thank God that's over, you know, and I needed a relief. I needed to step away from it. For my own personal reasons. And maybe in some ways, Dave disbanding Megadeth, he did for me what I couldn't do for myself, which is take a break from it. I didn't see it as an end. I saw it as a sort of temporary break, which obviously it turned out to be. Even in the years I was away from it, I never felt like it was over. I felt like it was just a season, you know, apart that I needed to grow in. And I think I came back to Megadeth in 2010, a much stronger human being, a stronger performer, singer, bass player, writer, all the things I got to do in those I guess 7-8 years, whatever it was. And keep in mind, Megadeth was non-existent for a couple of those years. So really it was only about 5 years that I wasn't, you know, participating in the band. But I, you know, I also enjoyed, but the scariest thing was, who am I? What am I going to do? What's going to become of me? Right. Those are kind of the three big questions. And, what turned out to happen was everything was taken care of. I'm not going to lie. I don't mean this to sound like a religious show, but I put GOD, good orderly direction, as number one. you know, stay tethered to the master, you know, and he will provide all that needs to be provided. And sure enough, my bills were paid. I was making a fraction of the money that I was in Megadeth, and somehow the bills were paid. You know, it's kind of like the loaves and fishes, you know what I mean? It just sort of appeared. And I got the job with Peavey. I went to college. I got my degree. Because I noticed now, not being a rock star, working kind of in the corporate world, even though I was working just as a contractor, and I was mostly hired because of my phone book and my you know, contacts in the business. I realized that if I ever want to make any other lateral move here, I'm going to probably need to check the box like, yeah, I went to college, you know. Right. And so I did that. I stepped up and I did that. You know, then all of a sudden these music things started happening. F5 had a little cover band called Hail, some other famous dudes.
Temple.
Yep, I did. Yeah, Temple of Brutality. We did all these different things, and it's interesting because it's sort of like as I kept the faith and I stayed true to the just, you know, provide for my family, take care of first things first, do that. And suddenly all the music stuff started coming back because I was prepared to walk away from it. I didn't want to, but I was going, you know what, maybe this is this big boy time. I'm in my late 30s. Maybe I got to put the guitar down, grow up, cut my hair, and be a real, you know, be like a real guy now. And the truth of it is, you know, again, somehow the good Lord brought that back to me, you know, and next thing you know, I started playing more and more. I was playing with different people. It broadened my horizons. My jazz band teacher used to tell me that, broaden your horizons, you know, when I was in high school. And now here I was as a middle-aged adult, you know, broadening my horizons, playing with a lot of other people in a lot of different settings. And, you know, so when I did come back to Megadeth, I suddenly was a much better Megadeth member because I think in the early days, I only had that one group, you know, for 20 years. And I think there was always a part of me that I wanted to step out and try some other things. But it's funny, here I am in this big multi-platinum Grammy-nominated band, insecure that I could go out and play with other people. And so finally one day, sort of like the good Lord took me off the chain and said, well, I'm taking your house, and I'm not literally my house away, but I'm sort of taking the house of Megadeth away from you, and I'm going to force you out into the, and you're going to have to trust me. You know, again, it's kind of a, you know, sort of a biblical story. And quite honestly, that's how I got tied into the kind of the more religious belief stuff that I have, is I was raised a Lutheran kid. And after I went to college, you know, you're reading 2-inch thick books every day for a year, you know, a couple years. And one day I sat down in my living room and I looked up and I saw a Bible. I was like, what book am I going to read? And I saw the Bible. I was like, you know, I never did read that thing. I should probably pull it down and see what the heck it says, you know. And mostly because I was really pissed off how political people started pulling the Bible in as sort of some sort of agenda for them. And I'm like, all right, I got to read it and find out for sure, because I'm seeing a disconnect here, you know. I'm seeing a disconnect between these political factions, and so I read it for myself. It's like, let me find out about it. And the truth of it is, you know, it confirmed a lot of the disciplines that I had been taught in my, you know, my sobriety, of things of, you know, good stewardship and, you know, disciplines. Stay true to your disciplines, you know. And I learned it from going to the gym. You know, you want to stay trim. You want to, you know, be, you know, look how I wanted to look, you know, as a performer. You got to go to the gym every day. You got to eat good. You got to follow the disciplines. You can't just expect it to show up. You know, if you want to be good at your instrument, you need to practice every day. You got to put time in every day. So, you know, these are the things that I learned largely through that. I mean, I learned a lot of stuff before, you know, Megadeth ended, but during that period was like a real, you know, a moment of initially it was fear. Then it became kind of almost thrill seeking, like, wow, I wonder what's going to happen today, you know? And that's kind of what my day is today. I wake up every day, I open this laptop I'm on, and it's just like, see cool emails and cool people, and Drew saying, hey, you want to go on the classic metal show? And, you know, and life is just this wonderful, you know, buffet of cool stuff, you know, no longer black and white, you know, because in between black and white is where all the color is. And that's where I like to live.
Very cool.
Well, I'm glad to see you're not racist, Dave. You enjoy all colors.
All colors. All colors. Yeah. Well, you know, we wear too much black in heavy metal anyway. You know?
Yeah. Well, look at me, Dave. I got the black on. I think we all do.
think we all.
You know, black is just a universal symbol for a tribe, I think, right? You know what I mean? It's like when you see like dudes with long hair or whatever, and they're wearing black T-shirts, it's like, okay, that's obviously it. That's a tribe we belong to, you know.
It definitely is. I mean, Chris has got the long hair going, same here, and all you guys, and you know, both Chris and I have, you know, can attest to, you know, attending numerous Megadeth shows over the years, and you know, I own the whole catalog, and we play it here on the show, and you know, support you. I've met you on a few occasions. I met you several times at NAMM. And you know, we've had a roundtable podcast thing together a couple of times, and you know, we're always happy to have you on the show and help support your work, regardless of whether it's music related or book related or coffee related. And you know, you guys are always welcome on.
Cool. Well, thank you guys very much. I'm gonna go probably lay low and do a little. I was watching the Rock and Roll Hall. Actually, after Biden's sort of acceptance speech thing, I watched the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction, which was very cool. I actually have come to appreciate those things, because I like watching those things like on Netflix. You know, like the David Foster and Clive Davis, and you know, some of these things. It's you know, it's really cool to see kind of the retrospective of somebody's career like that, and you know, so it's pretty cool.
Well, both Chris and I watch that kind of stuff constantly. We talk about it here on the show all the time.
Sure.
Yeah, it's cool, isn't it? It's great. It's the Clive Davis one especially, you know, and because always what's part of these stories is, you know, we only see one part, which is it started big and then it got bigger and it was all great, right? That's always right. And when you watch these documentaries, obviously you see inside that we're all alike. There's these personal struggles, there's these triumphant moments, and then there's something that makes it fall apart. And usually, you know, they come back together in some way and it's even bigger and better than ever. I mean, that's been a part of my journey in my life, and even with Megadeth. You know, but you know, it's the humanness of it that is cool, because on the stage, obviously we're there to present celebrity and rock stardom, and that's our job. You know, we're not there to show the flaws. We're there to show the perfection, you know. Right. But I think what's kind of cool is always behind those stories is a story of humanness, you know, and that's something everybody can relate to.
Sure. David, real quick before we let you go. I've been reading you know, you're in the press every single day. You're like Blabbermouth's like favorite guy that they don't hate.
Go-to guy. Yeah.
Yeah. You know, you're the guy they don't hate on Blabbermouth. And I've read constantly the thing saying it's going to be a heavy record. This Megadeth record is going to be a heavy record. You're not going to bait and switch us with another Risk or Super Collider, are you? We're going to get a heavy one, aren't we?
As far as what I've contributed, no. You know, I mean, I don't know. It's a long way till the record comes out, but no. In all seriousness, you know, one of the things that you know, Dave said back in 2018, kind of late 2018, we're starting to get together and kind of get riffs put down and stuff. And he said, he goes, you know, I want to sit back and listen. You know, I feel like so many of these records, we're on tour, we're busy, we're moving all the time, and we sort of go in, we plug in, we just play our parts, and we unplug and we go home, and we're never together as a band. And he goes, I really want to have kind of what we used to do with Peace Cells, you know, and Countdown and Rust in Peace and stuff. You know, we spent time. Those records would take 1.5 years, 2 years to make them. And this one's probably coming on almost 4 years. COVID added 1 year, of course. Last year, you know, Dave thankfully overcame his throat cancer treatment. So that was certainly, you know, a setback for us. So there have been some obstacles, and, you know, quite honestly, the obstacles create the story. You know, I was kind of wondering lyrically where this is going to go, you know, because you start always with a blank canvas, and, you know, so, you know, great records always have some struggle in them. And that's part of it. You know, the great records like Fleetwood Mac Rumors, of course, you know, Guns N' Roses, Appetite for Destruction. You know, we've had certainly our Megadeth records as well. So, you know, in hindsight, taking some time with it and some of the just things that have happened along the way, I think are good. They create, if nothing else, they create a tension. They create an urgency, like we we're just talking about. Like, we want to get this freaking record done now. We got to get going. And, you know, endless time never completes the thing. And I found with Megadeth that when there's a deadline, we get shit done, man. You know, that I've seen that happen. So I feel like it's in that process now that like now it's okay. Now it's freaking getting going. And that's always a fun thing to see.
Cool.
Perfect. Well, Drew, one question for you before we let you go. How did you become a fan of the CMS?
Oh man, you know what? Somebody pointed out that you guys talked about the Bang Tango movies a couple years ago.
Okay.
And there was a clip of it on YouTube, and this is a while back. It was some years ago, and I heard that, and I just fell in love with you guys. So I just always checked you guys out, and always kept up with you guys' podcast. I love the stuff you do. You guys talking about Eddie Trunk and all that and everything, and all the Kiss stuff and all that. It's just I love it, man. It's always cool to kind of pop in some headphones and hang out with you guys for a little bit, you know.
Perfect. Well, we appreciate you guys coming on again. The new book is called ROCK STAR HITMAN. You can get it on Amazon, and it is available. It's a short, quick read, as Dave has said, and I'm gonna delve into it a little more this weekend. So go pick it up and support your favorite rock star as well as our new friend Drew, who we're meeting really for the first time. So good stuff, guys.
Thank you. Thanks, you guys. Have a good one. And I'm sure we'll be chatting soon with all the stuff coming out in the next.
Perfect.
Yeah, we'll talk to you. We'll talk to you next week when your next project's announced.
Exactly.
And a cool little tidbit. This is actually our friend Vin from the band Sponge.
Oh, no kidding.
Yes. So we actually have a real rock star on the book, believe it or not. Yeah.
I got to give Vin a little shout out. But thank you so much, guys. Thank you.
All right.
See ya. Yeah.
I think a good way to end this little segment here is to play something from Euthanasia. I think it's very appropriate.
I agree.
Anyway, Addicted to Chaos.
Perfect.
So here it is. It's Megadeth exclusively here. What, Chris?
On your classic metal show.